And we're on question time, so I'll call Senator Birmingham.
Oh, you go to Don. Yep.
Minister Wong.
President, I advise changes to ministerial arrangements.
Order. Senators, we are now in question time. We have Senator Wong on her feet. Please sit down in your seats quickly. I'm going to call Senator Wong again. Senator Wong.
Thank you. I advise changes to ministerial arrangements as Senator Farrell will be absent from question time today on account of...
You don't miss me this much, do you? I'm feeling sad. I'm injured. I feel injured.
Oh, OK. In his absence, I will represent the Minister for Trade and Tourism. Senator Gallagher will represent the Special Minister of State, the Minister for Social Services, the Minister for the National Disability Insurance Scheme, the Minister for Government Services, the Minister for Housing and the Minister for Homelessness. And Senator Watt will represent the Minister for Resources and the Minister for Industry and Science.
Thank you, Senator Wong. Senator Birmingham.
Thank you, President. President, my question is to the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Wong. I refer the Minister to her failure yesterday to address the specific question of whether the Government of the Solomon Islands was given the courtesy of advance knowledge of her intention to publicise the Australian Government offer of financial assistance for the conduct of the Solomon Islands elections on schedule in 2023. I again specifically asked the Minister, was the Government of the Solomon Islands given the courtesy of advance knowledge of the Minister's intention on Monday of this week to publicise the Australian offer of financial assistance for the conduct of the Solomon Islands elections on schedule in 2023?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, President, and thank you to Senator Birmingham for another question about the Solomon Islands. I again refer to my previous answer and make the point that no announcement was made. As I said to him yesterday, I answered a question about Australian electoral assistance in the Solomons, which has been ongoing for 20 years. I am surprised that the government wishes to, knowing as they do, having been so recently in government, and Senator Payne, I'm sure, could advise Senator Birmingham about this, knowing the challenge of a greater contest in our region, that the opposition continues to want to press this. I was very clear. I was very clear. Well, I'll take the interjection about we were so reserved from the campaign. We remember the campaign. We remember the attempts from those on the other side to call people who are in our side of politics a Manchurian candidate. Disgrace. It was an absolute disgrace. I would hope there would be bipartisanship around what is occurring in our region. The government has been very clear about the importance of both the Pacific and Southeast Asia. We have had the Prime Minister, myself, Minister Conroy and others in the region. We have increased the assistance through the Development Assistance Program. We have shifted on climate, which is the first national security priority of Pacific Island nations. And what I would say to the Shadow Minister for Foreign Affairs, that it might be best to leave behind some of the mistakes that were undertaken in government and perhaps work in a bipartisan way to strengthen Australia's security position in the Pacific.
Senator Birmingham, first supplementary.
President, has the Minister or Prime Minister Albanese spoken with Solomon Islands Prime Minister Songavare since the Solomon Islands government released the extraordinary statement on Tuesday, accusing the Minister and the Albanese government of interference in their domestic affairs? And if not, why not?
Minister.
We will engage in the way we consider, as the Government of Australia, most appropriate for Australia's national interests with the Government of the Solomon Islands. If the Shadow Foreign Minister had been looking at, I think, some social media, he would have seen that Solomon Islands is, I think the Foreign Minister Masudi is visiting. Obviously, we will continue to engage with them as we do. And I have to say, I find it passing strange that I get a question about engagement from a government which had so little engagement, both before and after a security agreement with China was entered into, and whose best response was to send Minister Zizzelia.
Thank you, Senator Birmingham.
President, point of order. The question was specifically...
Oh, the minister's finished. I invite you to make your second supplementary.
Thank you, President. I refer the minister to her statement in relation to Timor-Leste's use of media to pressure the Australian government when, whilst in Timor-Leste, she told a media conference on 1 September that discussions between countries, quote, are best done respectfully and directly, not through the media. Does the media concede that she failed to live up to her own standard by publicly revealing details of the offer to the Solomon Islands government? And I again invite the minister to be clear as to whether she or Prime Minister Albanese have spoken with Prime Minister Sogavare since Tuesday.
Thank you, Senator Birmingham. Minister.
We had thank you, President, and I'll take. In response to the first part of the question, which deals with Timor-Leste, is the minister might know if he I hope he does take the time to familiarise himself. The context of my responses to media in Timor-Leste, which unlike for many years we actually have visited. I think the last Australian Foreign Minister to visit was Ms Bishop, and I had very good private discussions as well as public engagement, private discussions with the President and my counterpart, the Minister for Finance. The issue which concerns Timor-Leste correctly is the economic and fiscal difficulties they see into the future as the Bayu-Undan field and the Petroleum Fund diminish, and the fact that the Greater Sunrise project has been stalled for years. Unlike your government, we will work with them to try and resolve that issue.
Senator Pratt.
President, my question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator Wong. Can the Minister please update the Senate on the Albanese government's progress on ending the climate wars? And what does this mean for the Australian people?
Minister.
Thank you to Senator Pratt for the question, and for many people in this chamber, regrettably not those opposite, this day is a day that has been a long time coming, a day in which historic legislation has been passed in response to one of the most urgent and pressing issues of our time, climate change. It is no accident that the bill that the Senate has just voted on was one of the first pieces of legislation introduced by the Albanese government, because we know that Australians deserve and our nation needs overdue leadership in this area. I'll take that interjection from the National Party. It's all symbolic. It's all symbolic, is it? Well, it just really demonstrates how out of touch those opposite are, how out of touch they are, and how little those in the coalition who actually might understand that the Australian people voted for climate change action might want to be listened to. So I want to first say, with the passage of legislation in this place, can I first acknowledge those who worked with the government constructively on sensible amendments, and can I also acknowledge the support from the business community, the Business Council of Australia, which said this legislation brings Australia a step closer to ending the so-called climate wars, which have been counterproductive and served as a handbrake on progress. Towards decarbonisation, and have slowed our economy. And, of course, the National Farmers Federation, who said in evidence to the Senate inquiry that the bills are, and I quote, framework legislation that can provide business certainty. Business certainty. I know it's hard for the National Party to realise that their base is not with them on this. I know that's hard. But they are not. And of course the Investor Group on Climate Change, which talked about the opportunity to unlock hundreds of billions of investment in climate solution. It is those opposite who are out of touch.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Pratt, first supplementary.
President, what are the international implications of the Albanese government's climate policy?
Minister.
Thank you, and I again thank Senator Pratt for her supplementary question and for her, along with every Labor senator's interest in progress on climate. The rest of the world does watch closely what Australia does on climate, and as well as lifting our international competitiveness, the passage of this legislation is a watershed moment in Australia's international standing. Countries of our region in particular look to Australia as a member of the Pacific family to act with respect for their existential interest in action on climate change. If the Shadow Foreign Minister actually wanted to ensure we had stronger relations with the Pacific, he would not have voted against action on climate change, which is precisely one of the disadvantages to our national interests that the former government continued to hold on to. It is simply not good enough for senators to say, well, this country isn't doing enough or that country isn't doing enough. Our Pacific family expects more from us.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Pratt, second supplementary.
How does the Albanese government's climate policy listen to and deliver on the will of the Australian people at the last federal election?
Minister.
Thank you. Well, President, we all know that this Senate for too long has stood in the way of climate action. And whether it's former Senator Barnaby Joyce or Senator Abetz in the past, or today Senator Canavan, Senator Rennick and so many others, too many senators have been part of the problem, not part of the solution. Unfortunately, some senators still persist, and we see Senator Rennick now. The people who refuse to listen to the Australian people, refuse to acknowledge the message of the federal election 3 months ago. So far, it's been more of the same for them. They opposed the climate bills before they saw them. And what is most extraordinary is they just ignore the message of the Australian people. They just ignore the message of the Australian people. You're not content with losing touch with Australians in Boothby, Curtin, Goldstein, etc.
Your time
You're
has
just out of
expired.
touch.
Senator Hughes.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Early Childhood Education, Senator Watt. Minister, under Labor's proposed childcare changes, what will the increase in childcare subsidy be for a family earning $60,000? Is it true that the subsidy will lift from 90% to 95% under Labor's proposal?
Minister.
Thank you, President. Well, and yes, I am the representing minister. That is a statement of fact. As the representing minister, what I can tell you is that the Albanese Labor government will be delivering cheaper childcare for Australian families, something that your government did not do. 97% of families in Australia will be better
Senator
off
Watt,
as a result.
Please resume your seat. Senator Hughes.
Point of order, relevance. It was a very specific question. Is it true they will go from 90 to 95% a family with $60,000? Thanks, Senator Ciccone. You should be the minister.
Senator Hughes. Senator Rennick. I did remind senators yesterday, and I'll remind senators again today, when you call a point of order, you simply state the point of order and then not get into argument or other statements. I do believe that the minister is being relevant. He's just started answering the question. There were a lot of interjections already the minute he stood, so it's quite difficult to hear him. But I am listening carefully. Thank you, Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. As I was saying, I'm very happy about the fact that the Albanese Labor government will be delivering cheaper childcare to Australian families. Not just one family, not just two families, but 97% of Australian families using the early childhood sector and childcare system will be better off as a result of our policy, something that you were not able to do in your first year, your second year, your third year, your fourth year, your fifth year, your sixth year, your seventh year, your eighth year or your ninth year.
Minister Watt, please resume your seat. Senator Hughes.
Point of order on direct relevance. It was a very specific question that the minister should be able to answer. Families on $60,000, 90 to 95.
Senator Hughes, there is no need to. Senator Hughes, you've asked me for a point of order. You may not agree with what I say, but I am the President and it's your job to make your point of order, sit down and then not further interject. Senator Watt?
That's right.
Senator Watt, I would draw you back to the question. Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you, President. I'm happy to take the exact details of that question on notice for Senator Hughes. And I'm happy that she's showing an interest in this issue, because I don't remember any opposition senator ever doing anything to support childcare in the way that the Labor government is doing. What I do remember is the now opposition copying the policy of the Labor then opposition when it came to childcare, but not delivering that policy in full. And for that reason, that policy, what was then your policy, left a lot of Australian families much more out of pocket than ours will. That's what I remember.
Minister, please resume your seat.
Please direct the minister to actually answer the question.
Thank you, Senator Hughes. I will remind the minister. I know he's agreed to take the question on notice, but Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Hughes, resume your seat. I am not entertaining any further points of order from you on this matter. I've directed the minister to be relevant. Minister Birmingham.
President, on the points of order that have been taken, and indeed Senator Watt's assertion while you were speaking before that cavalierly that he still has 30 more seconds with a tone that apparently means he can say whatever he likes. Just because he has taken the details on notice does not remove the obligation for him to be directly relevant to the question that has been asked, and does not provide him with free licence to simply talk about the previous government, President. And I encourage you to draw him back to the direct relevance of the question.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Senator Birmingham. You might recall I was in the process of responding to the point of order raised by Senator Hughes, and Senator Hughes took it upon herself to interject again. So I've not been given the answer. I've not been given the opportunity to respond. I will draw Senator Watt back to the question, and I would ask all senators to raise their points of order respectfully and to sit down when asked to do so. Minister.
Thank you, President. As I was saying, and I appreciate the opportunity to remind the chamber, all Australian families who use the childcare system will be better off under the Labor policy that we will now implement than under the policies that existed under the former government. It took a change of government to deliver the cheaper childcare that Australian families so desperately need. There is one party that is delivering a cost of living benefit to Australians. It is Labor in childcare and other areas.
Minister, your time has expired. Senator Hughes, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. So under Labor's proposed childcare changes, and I'm assuming you'll have to take this one on notice, but if you could stick to that, what will the increase in childcare subsidy be for a family earning $400,000? And is it true that the subsidy will now lift from 0 to 27% under Labor's proposal?
Minister.
Thank you, President. Again, I'm happy to take the details of that question on notice for Senator Hughes, and I'm sure that her colleagues in the House of Representatives are posing the same question to the actual minister to get that level of detail. If that's not occurring, perhaps she could have a chat to her colleagues about that. But I think the other point to be noticed here is that, as we have consistently said, President, childcare is not simply a social welfare program. Childcare is not simply about economically supporting families who receive childcare benefits, as important as that is. Increasing childcare payments is an important economic policy of this government to broaden particularly women's participation in the workforce. Having affordable childcare, regardless of income, is an important measure for this government to take to increase women's participation in the workforce. It is a shame that the former government didn't take the opportunity in any of the 9 and a bit years that it was in government to do the same thing.
Thank you, Minister. Your time has expired. Senator Hughes, second supplementary.
Now, whilst I appreciate the minister, not my job minister, Senator Watt, is taking it on notice to actually get the figures. Some of us actually have had a look at these papers. So perhaps you may like to explain why, under Labor's much vaunted cost of living support, it's proposing to give more than 5 times the extra assistance to a family earning over $400,000
Thank you,
than
Senator
it does
Hughes.
to a family earning
the time for the
60.
question has expired. Minister.
Thank you, President. There's nothing quite like being condescended to by Senator Hughes, is there, to make one's self-esteem feel even that much stronger. Whenever I'm feeling any degree of self-doubt—
Minister, I'm waiting for silence.
Yeah, that was. I
Senator
asked the
Hughes.
minister withdraw. That was disparaging to me and to every woman in this place. He should withdraw.
Senator Watt, if you think you were, if it would assist the chamber if you withdrew.
Well, if it would assist the chamber, I'm happy to withdraw. I will point out that I was directing those remarks to only Senator Hughes when it comes to condescending other people in this chamber.
Senator,
but if
Minister,
I'm happy to withdraw if that
resume
assists the
your
chamber.
seat, please. Thank you. Thank you. When I ask people to either, in the interest of the chamber, to withdraw or to withdraw fully, I don't expect it to be done. I expect it to be done in a serious manner, and for no other commentary to be put with that. So, if you would consider the chamber and withdraw and move on, thank you.
In answer to Senator Hughes' supplementary question, as I was saying in answer to the previous question, something that the opposition seems to fail to grasp is that childcare payments are not only a social welfare measure. They are an important measure to encourage more women to participate in the workplace. We know that women's participation in the workplace is far lower than men's, and we know that increasing women's participation in the workplace is an important economic measure for this government.
Oh, sorry. Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Ruston.
A point of order on clarification. Is the minister saying that childcare is a social welfare measure?
That's not a point of order, Senator Ruston. Please continue. Order. Order. Interjections across the chamber are disorderly, Senator Ruston. Minister Watt, please continue.
Thank you, President. And if Senator Ruston requires me to repeat the point I was making was that childcare payments are not only a social welfare measure, they are an economic development measure. The Australian workforce needs more women,
Thank you, Minister.
and childcare
Your time
payments will
has
assist.
expired. Senator McKim. Order. Senator McKim's got the call.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Minister, yesterday's national accounts showed that profits share of national income hit a new record high and that wages share of national income hit a new record low. This means that in the 60 years that the national accounts have been kept and published, never have business owners been getting a bigger slice of the pie and never have workers been getting a smaller slice of the pie. Will your government now finally accept that in the domestic context it is corporate profiteering that is a key driver of inflation and that wages are actually not driving inflation?
Thank you, Senator McKim. Minister.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator McKim for the question on the national accounts and his ongoing interest in the economy. I don't think we have ever, as the government said, I don't think we've ever said in response to the final part of your question that wages have been driving inflation. I don't think anyone on this side of the chamber has been saying that at all. On the broader question, there are some challenges that are clear in the national accounts, which makes our economic plan even more important than ever to roll out in relation to some of those issues we've seen in supply chains, in relation to some of the issues around productivity. On the point of businesses and their profits, I mean, we want business to do well. We think it is important that business does well, but we've been on the record a number of times, including as a major part of our election campaign, the fact that we want to see wages moving. And that's why we have done absolutely everything we can since coming to government to make sure that we are supporting sensible and reasonable wage increases particularly in areas like the minimum wage for people working on the lowest wages in the country, and also in the area of aged care, where we're supporting the Fair Work Commission. We've got some work underway around workplace relations reform, which, as you know, the Senate will have to deal with at some point later this year. But we are doing everything we can to make sure that working people are getting a decent pay rise. That has been one of the major failings in our economy over the last 10 years. It was because we had this mob over there had wage suppression as a deliberate design feature of their economic architecture. We are breaking down that architecture because we want to see wages grow.
Minister, your time has expired. Senator McKim, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, today in his speech to the Annika Foundation, RBA Governor Dr Philip Lowe yet again failed to acknowledge the role of corporate profits in driving inflation, and I might reflect neither did you just then in your answer. Yet in July, Dr Lowe said workers should anchor their expectation of wage increases at 3.5%, well below inflation. Are you comfortable with an RBA governor jawboning down wages but saying nothing about corporate profits?
Thank you, Senator McKim. Minister.
Thank you, President. Well, I'd have to go back and have a look at I remember the governor saying, making comments about wanting to see wages with a 3 in front of it. And I understand, and my recollection is he was saying that at a time when inflation was sitting below 3%, sitting probably in the order of 1.7%. So my recollection of that was that the governor was saying that the wages were a handbrake on the economy, or slow wages growth was a handbrake on the economy. He wanted to see them get moving. We are now, of course, in a very different environment, and I've only had a short opportunity to have a look at Governor Lowe's remarks today in his speech, but I think he went through in that speech explaining, I think he used the word surprise around the increase in the rate of inflation. And he certainly went through it in detail about the unexpected nature of that inflation surge and some of the reasons behind that. But I think his record on wages has been that—
Thank you, Minister. Your time has expired. Senator McKim, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Minister, last year Dr Lowe said that the RBA would not increase interest rates until wages growth was materially higher. Real wages are going backwards, but the RBA has increased rates for 5 consecutive months after effectively telling Australians they would not go up until 2024. Do you agree that we need some accountability in the system, and do you agree that Dr Lowe has got to go?
Thank you, Senator McKim. Your time has expired. Minister.
Thank you, Madam President. In the minute available, there was a lot in that to unpack, but I strongly support the independence of the Reserve Bank and the long-standing convention that the bank should not be interfered with by politicians. I think the review that's underway is useful, and Governor Lowe has made some comments on that today. I think the Reserve Bank is doing the work that they need to do to bring inflation down, but the review will certainly assist all of us to ensure that the Reserve Bank remains fit for purpose. And I think the Governor has been accountable for the comments he's made and some of the decisions the bank has made, particularly in the last few months, in raising interest rates. I understand he's given this speech today. He's given a long press conference afterwards. So in that respect, he has been accountable for those decisions.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Bilyk.
Thank you, President. My question's to the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Senator Wong. Yesterday, Australia and Timor-Leste signed a defence cooperation agreement. Can the Minister update the Senate on how the agreement will strengthen our defence relationship with Timor-Leste?
Minister.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Bilyk for her interest in foreign policy and for her question, which does go to a very important issue about how Australia can work best with the countries of our region to support and promote our mutual security and sovereignty. So Australia is committed to supporting Timor-Leste's security and sovereignty, including through our enduring defence cooperation. So the Albanese government was pleased to sign a defence cooperation agreement with Timor-Leste, and the agreement signed yesterday by our defence ministers is a status of forces agreement that sets out reciprocal protections, responsibilities and privileges each country will grant the military personnel of the other in its territory. It will allow both countries to increase defence and security cooperation, especially in the maritime domain, given our shared border and adjacent maritime zones, and this responded to particularly a priority that was expressed publicly by President Ramos Horta. It will announce our ability to operate together as required, conduct exercises and training, and cooperate on humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. I'm pleased to advise the Senate the agreement also means Timorese military members operating or exercising or training in Australia will receive the same protections, responsibilities and privileges as Australian personnel will receive in Timor-Leste. Australia welcomes this defence cooperation agreement. We acknowledge the contribution of the Timor-Leste government and can I particularly acknowledge my counterpart, Minister Magno, for her assistance in bringing this agreement to conclusion. The agreement provides the opportunity to deepen our close defence and security partnership with Timor-Leste. This is the government working to listen to our partners in the region and responding to their needs in order to maintain a stable, prosperous and peaceful region.
Senator Bilyk, first supplementary.
Thank you. How will the Albanese Labor government continue to help Timor-Leste build its economic resilience?
Minister.
Thank you, President. And Senator Bilyk, thank you for that question, because the economic resilience of Timor-Leste is of great importance, not only to the people of East Timor, but to Australia, which has a stake in the Timor-Leste independence and sovereignty, and obviously very close personal relationships and friendships between our two peoples. In my recent visit, I announced an additional $20 million in budget support for Timor-Leste to support its economic resilience and recovery from COVID-19. We are also on track to provide our first bilateral concessional loan for Timor-Leste for the development of Dili Airport. We have a partnership to deliver a submarine fibre optic cable, the first such connection between Timor-Leste and Australia, and we continue to support Timor-Leste's ASEAN membership aspirations and its path to accession to the World Trade Organisation. We will continue to work with Timor-Leste.
Thank you, Minister. The time has expired. Senator Bilyk, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister Wong. It's great work that you're doing there. How does this agreement complement the Albanese Labor government's approach to strengthening our relationships across the region?
Minister.
Thank you, President. Well, the government is looking to rebuild and strengthen our relationships in Southeast Asia and the Pacific. And as senators may be aware, we've obviously across government, but whether it's the Prime Minister, myself or the other ministers, both Cabinet and within the portfolio, we are actively engaging in the region. What we hear from other nations in the region, from friends and partners, is the value of genuine engagement, of respect, of listening, and most importantly, that we want to engage in a region that recognises that our futures are shared. These are challenging times in the world. We all understand that, but it's best that we navigate these challenges together, stronger together with our friends and our partners in the region. The region does value partnership, and that is the approach that this government will continue to take.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Lambie.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is for Minister representing the Assistant Treasurer, Minister Gallagher. APRA's review of super fund marketing expenditure found 12 funds spent $87 million on marketing between 2018 and 2020. Funds have a legal duty to spend members' money in a way that financially benefits the members. The regulator found funds had a lack of evidence that this spending can be justified. But instead of cleaning up this apparent waste of money, your government is cutting back on transparency over how this spending gets disclosed. Why are you making it easier for funds to spend the retirement savings of everyday Australians on billboards and TV ads promoting themselves when the regulator quite clearly says this money isn't delivering benefits to members?
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Lambie for the question. Labor is committed to delivering accountability, transparency and good governance in every part of our financial system. Our world-class superannuation system is a massive success story, delivering $3.4 trillion in national savings and better retirement outcomes for Australians. I think Senator Lambie is referring to the regulations that will come before this Senate around some changes that were being made to streamline disclosure requirements for superannuation funds and aligning those with the national accounting standards. The new regulations will still require superannuation funds to disclose, in particular in relation to any political donations, and they will ensure that the new regulations will have a high level of meaningful transparency for superannuation members.
Senator Lambie, first supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. This supplementary question is actually really simple. Under your draft annual members meeting regulations, will it be easier or harder for members to identify specific payments their fund has made on advertising to industrial bodies and related parties? We just want to know, will it be easier or harder?
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister.
Well, I think the issue around the annual members' meetings is around informing, around process of holding those meetings. So the idea is that members are able to ask for further information through those mechanisms. So I would say that they are still able to ask for that. If they're interested in that, then they will know they want to ask about it. And then they can ask for it through that process and have the information provided.
Senator Lambie, second supplementary.
Okay, I was going to do a point of order. Okay. The Assistant Minister has previously said these regulations need changing because the compliance costs for funds are too high. I just don't get it. Funds have to keep track of all their expenses and report the big number they add up to. So here's my question. How much extra would it cost exactly for funds to tell people what numbers they added up to get to their final figure?
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Minister.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, if there are further information to provide to Senator Lambie, I will come back. I don't have a figure in front of me, but I do understand that there is a view that aligning some of the requirements or reducing red tape around these, but still allowing requisite information that members will be after is behind the regulations that the Minister has made. I should say that the regulations still do require a level of information to be provided through these annual members' meetings. I see, and the government sees no reason why I think it's any reduced transparency for members, but allows streamlined reporting in line with some of the other arrangements, including the Australian accounting standards.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Scarr, sorry.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. I'll refer to the Government's Code of Conduct for Ministers. Clause 3.11 shareholding states, I quote, "In recognition of the collective responsibility that ministers bear in relation to Cabinet decisions, this code requires that ministers divest themselves of investments and other interests in any public or private company or business other than public superannuation funds or publicly listed managed funds or trust arrangements where, Roman 2, the fund or trust does not invest to any significant extent in a business sector that could give rise to a conflict of interest with the minister's public duty." What is the definition of significant extent?
Thank you, Senator Scarr. Minister.
Thank you, President. Thank you to the Senator for the question, and he refers to a provision in the code which, as I said yesterday, does not did not exist under the government in which he was a member. I mean, it is.
Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Carr.
Point of order relevance. I asked a question specifically in relation to the ministerial code of conduct currently in place. There should be no need to refer to historical documents.
Thank you, Senator Scarr. The minister has just begun her response. I believe she is being relevant for the short time she's been on her feet, and I'll continue to listen. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. And obviously, any legal phrase can be is subject to interpretation, but I think the intent is very clear. The intent is clear. This is because, unlike those opposite, we recognise the potential and, frankly, at times inherent conflict of interest in ministers in a cabinet making decisions which whilst owning shares. So we have set a higher standard, and I appreciate that the opposition want to probe the merits of that. We do think it's appropriate. It's in recognition of the collective responsibility that members of Cabinet or members of the Executive bear in relation to decisions, and unlike what has gone before for the last decades, it was the Prime Minister's view, shared by his Cabinet, that it is important that divestment is the way in which these matters are ultimately resolved in. And as you would have seen in the media, and I know the opposition have asked questions about this, that is what is taking place.
Senator Scarr, first supplementary.
We'll add that to net zero. In question time yesterday, in response to a question from Senator Hume, Senator Wong said, "It is the Prime Minister's expectation that ministers do comply with the code." He's the Prime Minister, made that clear both privately and publicly. On what occasions has the Prime Minister privately made his expectations clear to each of Minister Shorten and McBain and Assistant Ministers Ayres and Kearney?
Thank you, Senator Scarr. Minister.
Thank you. I'm certainly not going to go into every discussion the Prime Minister has, and nor would you expect me to. My remarks went to the standard that has been expected, and I would say to you, questions have been asked in relation to a number of the ministers to which you refer in the House in this week, and they have been appropriately answered. Now, I know that doesn't satisfy your thirst for some political hits, but they have been appropriately answered in the House. And I again say, Australians will look at you asking these questions, recognising that you never set such a standard for yourselves. You never set such a standard for yourselves. And we saw over the 9 years in your government the number of ministers who did have shares in companies which may have been affected by decisions of the federal cabinet.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Scarr, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. I think it is more pertinent to ask whether or not it satisfied the Code of Conduct as opposed to me. Minister, has the Prime Minister requested you or had any discussions with you about ministers or assistant ministers who have breached or may be in breach of the Ministerial Code of Conduct?
Thank you, Senator Scarr. Minister.
No, and what the Prime Minister has said publicly reflects his private position, which is his expectations are that all of us comply with the Ministerial Code of Conduct.
Senator Babet.
My question is to Minister Wong, representing the Prime Minister. Can the Minister name one country in the world where a higher share of solar and wind power has led to lower electricity prices?
Thank you, Senator Babet. Minister.
Well, I make the point. Thank you to the senator for the question, and I would say to him that it is not a highly contested position by most who look at the energy market in Australia that the cheapest new form of generation is clean energy. And in fact, there is a live market experiment for that, and that is the state of the electricity market today. We have 4 gigawatts exiting, 1 coming in during the life of the previous government. I think those are the figures I recall Senator McAllister will tell me if I'm wrong, which reflects the lack of certainty in the market and the lack of certainty as a consequence of those opposites' failure to deal with their internal divisions as they do today.
Minister. Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a point of order on relevance. This is becoming a pattern from
Senator
Canavan.
Wong. I don't need the statement.
My point of order on relevance is the question was clearly about whether a country in the world has experienced lower prices, yet Minister Wong, as I say, is in a pattern, is going back to talk about the previous government's record. Nothing to do with the question.
Canavan, please resume your seat.
You were opposed to it at the time. They were in the world record.
I do believe the minister is being relevant. It is a broad topic and she is within the realm of the question. Minister.
Look, Senator Babbitt, I'm happy to look at ask the minister I'm representing if there are examples around the world of what we also see in Australia, which is that renewable energy is the cheapest form of new generation capacity. I don't think that's that is an unremarkable proposition, a proposition that is shared by those who manage our electricity system as well as the business community. So I respect that Senator Canavan is very clear in his interjections about his views on this issue. They're not shared, as I understand it, by the remainder of the coalition, but we see, as do business, benefit to Australian consumers from certainty that enables the investment in renewable energy in order to ensure we have a system which has greater supply and relatively lower prices.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Babet, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. The minister has just referred to renewables as the cheapest form of energy just now. Now, in June this year, the Australian Energy Market Operator found that on a per capita basis in 2018-2019, Australia added 4 to 5 times the solar and wind generation of any of the European Union, the USA, Japan or China. Now, if Australia is installing more of the so-called cheapest forms of power—
Senator Babet, your time has expired. Minister.
Well, I'll try and do my best. I'm not sure where you got to in the end of the question, but I think I understand the gravamen of the question, and if I don't, I'm sure the senator can follow it up with a supplementary. But the proposition that we can simply stay with the old coal-fired power electricity generation and that's going to give us cheaper energy is just no longer the case. And you know how we know that? Because no private sector entity wanted to invest in new coal-fired power. Well, private sector, I know Matt did, Senator Canavan did, but but my point is the market showed us. Now Senator Babet, I do recall in your first speech talking about the benefits of the free market. And what I'd say to you is the free market has spoken on this. The free market has spoken on this, and it hasn't gone down the path Senator Canavan wanted.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Babet, second supplementary. Order. 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 Senator Babet has— Thank you, Senator Babet.
Last year, the Biden administration banned imports of key solar panel material from Chinese-based Hoshine Silicon Industry Co. because they were involved with the forced labour of Uyghurs in China. Will the government take similar action to restrict the importation of solar panels made from forced labour from the CCP?
Thank you, Senator Babet. Minister.
Thank you, President. That is a very good question, Senator Babet, and one that about which I am deeply concerned, as is everyone on this side. And that is why we went to the last election with a position to strengthen the Modern Slavery Act and regulation within our economy. Because whether it's from Xinjiang, as the senator has referenced, or elsewhere in the world, and you know from the work that Walk Free and others have done that forced labour, which we regard in our heads as something of the past, is something of the present. And we should do what those opposite failed to do in government, in fact voted against, provisions to strengthen the Modern Slavery Act here in Australia. We should be clear about ensuring that we require companies to be far more careful in assuring their supply chains, and that we do not allow our purchases unknowingly to condone forced labour anywhere in the world.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Sterle.
Yes, thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Emergency Management, Senator Watt. How is the government working to improve Australia's resilience, response and recovery ahead of the 2022-23 high-risk weather season?
Minister.
And thank you, Senator Sterle, who I know has been very interested in this topic in WA, Cyclone Seroja and other events as well. In recent years, we've seen the increasing impacts of climate change on our communities and our environment, from the most savage bushfires our country has ever seen to some of the most devastating floods on record. As our climate changes and natural disasters become more common, the way in which we manage our emergency response needs to change as well. Unlike those opposite, we are committed to acting on climate change, both through reducing our emissions and by supporting those communities most impacted by the effects of climate change. The bill we've just passed today is an important part of reducing those emissions, and better preparing for future disasters also protects communities as well. As a country and as a government, we need to be better prepared, and we need to respond more quickly to natural disasters. Unfortunately, when those opposite were in power, they did neither, and that left Australians exposed. If we are asking Australians to be better prepared for natural disasters, then our government needs to do the same thing. And that's why last week I formally launched the National Emergency Management Agency, or NEMA, bringing together the capabilities of Emergency Management Australia and the National Recovery and Resilience Agency into a single agency. NEMA will bring together the capabilities of both agencies to provide support, prepare for the future disasters, lead the response when disaster strikes, and remain deeply connected with communities during recovery. It simply made no sense to have two separate disaster agencies in two different departments reporting to two different ministers, which was the situation we had under the former government. Bringing these agencies together as one, NEMA, will provide better coordination at a national level and ensure that we are better prepared for natural disasters and respond more quickly. Good governments plan for the best and prepare for the worst, and now NEMA will be a big part of that. NEMA will work side by side with state, territory and local governments.
Thank you, Minister.
From beginning to
Your time
end.
has expired. Senator Sterle, first supplementary.
Advise the Senate what concrete steps the Albanese government is taking to prepare communities for future natural disasters.
Minister.
Thank you again, Senator Sterle. Yesterday in the House of Representatives, the Albanese government introduced amendments to the Disaster Ready Fund legislation. These amendments will ensure that $200 million a year allocated in the fund is spent on disaster mitigation while maintaining our commitment to support communities as they recover from disasters. I think members on both sides of this chamber will remember the comments that I had to make about the former government's Emergency Response Fund, set up over 3 years ago with the support of the then opposition, with $4 billion in it, set up to spend money every year on disaster mitigation and disaster recovery. And by the time we got to the election, after 3 years, it hadn't built a single disaster mitigation project and hadn't released a single cent out of disaster recovery. We're determined to change that, and I'm happy to report that this legislation has been welcomed by stakeholders across the community, from the Insurance Council of Australia and Suncorp to the RACQ and the Local Government Association of Queensland.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Sterle, second supplementary.
Thank you. Well, there is a great focus on floods at the moment. We know that parts of the country will experience bushfire. What is being done to prepare these communities, Minister?
Minister.
Senator Sterle and the President are both interested in this because WA, of course, experienced bad bushfires again last year. I've recently been briefed by the Bureau of Meteorology about what they are forecasting for the upcoming high-risk weather season, and members of parliament and senators were invited to a similar briefing this week as well. It's true that while there is a very high chance of a third La Niña this summer, bringing more rain and flooding to the east coast states, and we need to be ready for that, in addition, in central and Western Australia, communities are facing increased chances of bushfire. That's why last week I met with AFAC, who coordinate the National Aerial Firefighting Centre, and they've assured me that the resources available to them are appropriate for this season and that preparedness activities are on schedule. And that may well include the redeployment of some aerial firefighting units to the west. Also last week, the new Australian Fire Danger Rating System was launched. This is a once-in-a-generation change to how the sector forecasts and warns about fire danger. Unlike our predecessors, the Albanese government is looking over the horizon, ensuring we're better prepared.
Senator Nampijinka-Price.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Indigenous Australians, Senator Gallagher. Given today's announcement that the Labor government has appointed a working group on The Voice, can the Minister advise the Senate if this working group will confirm the membership of The Voice, the selection process for The Voice and powers of The Voice prior to the proposed referendum?
Minister.
Do you have anything on that? Thank you, President. I think those are matters that the Minister will be dealing with. I understand there is a meeting tomorrow. And those matters are firmly within her areas of responsibility. This will be an important group. I heard... Sorry? It is a very important... Well...
thank you.
I think this is a very important group dealing with an issue around constitutional recognition, a voice to Parliament that is one I think that we should all engage in. There is an opportunity here to do something nation-building, something inclusive, something that wrongs or rights a previous wrong, and a lot of work needs to be done. This Senate has a role to play in that, about listening to different opinions, finding where there is shared agreement to progress this issue that is important to so many Australians, including so many First Nations Australians.
Senator Gallagher, please resume your seat. Senator Wong.
I'd ask you to draw Senator Thorpe to order.
Senator Thorpe, I did not hear any comments you made. Order! But your constant interjections are disorderly, and I would ask you to... Senator McKenzie, at the time that I'm calling another senator to order for being disorderly, you yourself are disorderly. I would call senators to order and to listen to the answers to the question. Minister.
Thank you. President, what I was saying was that the referendum working group will be an important part of implementing a First Nations voice to Parliament. We want to progress it in a way that brings people together, understanding that there are different views about how to progress this, but there is an opportunity here to work together to do something meaningful and respectful to progress reconciliation and to ensure that we deliver on some of on all of the Uluru Statement from the Heart in an organised and respectful way.
Your time has expired. Senator Nampijinka-Price, first supplementary. Order. Order. Senator Wong, order. Order. I would invite those senators who are constantly interjecting to put their hands up to ask questions when it's their opportunity to do so. But your constant interjections are disorderly. And Senator Thorpe, I've called you to order. It's not your chance to debate this. Senator Nampijinka-Price, first supplementary.
Can the government outline how free, prior and informed consent will be obtained by Aboriginal Australians during this new group's engagement activities, given the body will form the basis of the Yes campaign for a referendum?
Thank you, Senator Nampijinka-Price. Senator Gallagher.
Thank you, Madam President. And again, I repeat the answer I gave to the last question, which is about the referendum working group being an important part of implementing the First Nations voice to Parliament. It will assist the government and provide advice to the government. We have, in terms of the referendum working group, we have the Minister Linda Burney working with Senator Pat Dodson on that, with a whole range of other highly eminent Australians. Well, I'm not going to argue with you on that, Senator Thorpe. They are highly eminent Australians. Yeah, first-rate Australians on this group.
Senators,
absolutely.
Interjections across the chamber are disorderly. Senator Nampijinka-Price.
Point of order to relevance, specific to the question of how free, prior, informed consent will be obtained.
Thank you, Senator Nampijinka-Price. I do believe the minister is being relevant, and I'll ask her to continue. Minister.
Well, my point is that the working group will work through a whole range of issues in formulating their advice and progressing the implementation of this commitment. That is the job, and that is why it's been formed.
Thank you, Minister. Your time has expired. Senator Nampijinka-Price, second supplementary.
Can the minister outline how much the new working group on the proposed voice model is costing taxpayers, including the expenditure already allocated to the National Indigenous Australians Agency on developing the model?
Thank you, Senator Nampijinka-Price. Minister.
Thank you. There are costs associated with progressing the voice to Parliament. There was provision made for some of this by the previous government when New Lot were in power, so there was some money put aside in the budget. We expect there will be some additional investments. We see them as investments rather than costs that go to making sure that we do this properly, that we bring people together, that we unite a nation, and that we do it properly. That is why so much work is going in to making sure that the engagement mechanisms and the working group is able to have all of the conversations they need to have to bring people together to make sure that we do this in a way that unites the country rather than divides it. If there are additional costs, they will be in the budget.
Senator Wong.
Thank you, President. I ask that further questions be placed on notice.